Welcome to the Trumpet of the last few days. I'm Stanley Farrar.
I'm Robert Farrar.
And I am a mustache that has taken over the mind of Joshua Farrar and is piloting his body like a puppet.
Uh,
Do you just go around
kind of
eating
like from the
pistachios all the
tick.
time?
Well, he is in the home of the Picasso,
The pistachio?
or is it the pistachio? Yes.
Yeah, it's pistachio, or as decent Americans call it, pistachio.
Or in your case, mustachio.
Oh, pistachio by itself tastes okay. It's not the greatest thing in the world. Um, it requires a little bit too much salt to be edible, but Sicilians put it on everything. Absolutely everything. You ever had pistachio and orange pizza?
No.
Yeah, that's a common flavor here.
We're good Americans. The only fruit we eat on pizza is tomato. Take that, pineapple
They don't even
pizza
have the
eaters.
courtesy to season their tomatoes. They just go with like a tomato paste smeared over the top. Then throw cheese, pistachios, and whatever else comes to at hand, whether that be salami, oranges, or whatever. And frankly, it's disgusting.
So here's what you do: you take before the salami is actually prepared. You take the meat and you take the oranges. You put them together and then grind them into an orange salami.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Exactly. Let's do it.
On a side note, blood oranges actually taste a bit better than normal oranges, in my opinion.
High in iron,
No, just a lot juicier.
a
And
little
they
bit of
don't have
calcium.
that weird. They don't taste as pulpy for some reason. They still taste pulpy, but they don't taste as pulpy.
They don't have that metallic taste
Then again,
that you get from,
most
regular blood.
most oranges you get around here aren't true oranges or blood oranges. They're like this weird hybrid in between, where it's got splotches of normal orange and splotches of bright red orange. They're a bit sweeter than normal oranges.
You might as well you might as well just breed them into grapefruits at that point. So you can have the full spectrum.
They have grapefruit as well. They breed grapefruit and
Exactly.
oranges and lemons and limes.
So you bre- so you take the hybrid oranges, you breed them with the grapefruit so that you get the full orange to pink to red.
Oh, I forgot one of the other fruits they like to throw on their pizza: cactus fruits.
What kind of cactus fruit?
Prickly pear.
So they don't go for dragon fruit?
No.
So, now then, for the news of the last few days. Sicily has a lot of fruit.
Well, of course, they feed the entirety of Italy and then some.
On top of that, in across across an ocean, as well as a sea, or at least half a sea, in the United States of America. There has been a mixture of triumph and tragedy. The triumph, Kyle Rittenhouse, has been acquitted of all charges.
Rightfully so.
Anyone who watched the video can reasonably assume that it was self-defense. For the media who failed to watch the video for 15 months, well, you're a bunch of partisan hacks.
Even worse, tampered with the video.
Oh, that was the the prostitution, the prosecution.
He was in bed with a political ideology.
Oh my.
Oh, wow.
Freudian slip there.
When it comes, apparently, uh, when it comes down to it, it's they are still lying, saying that he killed 3 black people. He actually shot 3 white men, 2 of which died. Saw a
See,
meme recently saying
one
2
of
out of 3
which
isn't bad.
one of which was a pedophile and known child rapist. One of which was an arsonist, also convicted, and one of which was a violent felon, also convicted.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But remember, according to Mark Ruffalo, JoJo will be missed.
Isn't he the actor
Because
for the Hulk?
Yes.
Yes.
Why does his opinion matter for anything?
Supporting a pedophile. It doesn't. It's just that it's
but
just
actors,
funny.
Actors
using a pet
supporting
name.
pedophiles is par for the course. That's nothing to be surprised about. Speaking of which, the
Touche.
trial
Well,
for
but they don't usually.
the trial for Ghislaine Maxwell, the number 1 lieutenant
Is ongoing.
for Epstein, is ongoing.
Jeffrey Epstein.
And of course, rather than live recording that one, they decided to focus on Rittenhouse's trial.
Well, part of that's because it's a federal court. They don't record federal trials.
They don't record most trials.
But they never record federal trials. Instead, they have a court sketch artist sketch things out.
That's what they do for
Like they used
that's
to
what
do
they
way back
should
when.
do for all criminal trials. Because if there is a jury
But
if there is a jury that can be implicated,
the,
they should not
the
be
media
recording it.
the media has been intentionally suppressing the Maxwell trial.
Mm-hmm.
They've not been reporting on it. And if you notice, there's the news came out a long time ago of connections to certain very powerful, very influential people to Jeffrey Epstein. And they're in the trial, they're doing their best to not bring any of that up.
Well, let's be honest. The whole fact that she's still alive to stand trial means she's already signed the agreements, and they are confident that she's not going to rat anyone out. Otherwise, she never would have made it.
Yeah. A lot of people should be going down for this, and it's not going to happen. Though she's going down with the ship, very likely. There's too big of a public eye on her.
She probably got
and she may end up getting Epstein.
She's probably going to get a lighter sentence because most likely that was what was in the deal that allowed her to keep her life.
Either that, or they're just waiting to Epstein her in her cell.
Well, that's a possibility, but like I said, they wouldn't have even let it get to trial if they were going to do that.
Well, there's too big of a public eye on her. If news came out that she'd been killed in her cell, there'd be tons of backlash.
Yeah, that they would just sweep under the rug like they always do.
They're not as good at keeping things under the rug as they like to think.
Robert, did you know that there is an actor who, apart from being accused of rape around 7 times, every time they were about to testify in court against him, they suddenly wound up dead before actually making it there? Not only is he alive and still acting, but all of the charges were dropped because no one was there to testify against him? 7 times?
But he doesn't have the same kind. He doesn't have the same kind of public eye on him that Epstein and Maxwell have.
Perhaps not. But the whole fact that it could be swept under the rug that many times, I don't think they care about the public eye. They would have used someone as a scapegoat. Probably the guards again.
But people know that she has political connections.
Yes. People knew that Epstein had political connections, and that didn't save him.
Which is why it blew up and people memed it so many times.
And what have those memes changed, Robert? Tell me that.
They've kept them on their
Absolutely nothing.
toes.
Hasn't kept anyone on their toes.
Well, when you stop and think about the fact that most likely the reason he was Epsteined was because of having dirt on the Clintons.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a funny meme about
Kind
that.
of Arkansas.
Christmas ornaments don't hang themselves, just like Epstein. I wonder what America's gonna do when the Clintons, because they're old. They've only got so much left. What'll happen when they die?
There'll still be one Clinton left.
Because you know that someone's just gonna. Yeah, but one Clinton can't wreak as much havoc as two.
Yet.
But someone will still probably take their place.
Someone who's not quite as in the limelight probably already has.
Most likely.
Speaking of being in the limelight, though, while Kyle Rittenhouse has been under the microscope, simultaneously cheered and bashed, someone else has been in the limelight, simultaneously cheered and bashed. And that is the Waukesha killer. Let's just say that. Drove a vehicle.
Most of the media is going through. Most of the media is going through saying it was that he was involved in an accident.
But it was the Waukesha car crash instead of the Waukesha massacre.
When he purposely drove through barriers, ignored a police officer who tapped on his glass window and on his hood, and purposely drove down numerous people in a parade.
Last figure I saw was 6 people dead, over 60 injured. And the media just wants to call it a crash. This guy was a
And
violent
people think
felon
that, guns
who...
are the problem.
Actually, I did see someone on Twitter who was advocating getting rid of, making fewer cars on the road. Forget gun control. We got car control now, too.
The thing about it is, he had on his public media statements that his fondest wish was to kill white people. So there's a pretty strong indication this was racially motivated.
And the funny thing is, the media is insistent on not. If it was a white person, they'd be saying that a white person did this, like with the Ahmaud Arbery case the trial that just closed. They were very emphatic. I was seeing news article after news article. 3 white men convicted. But with this, nothing. Dead silent. Because they're racist. It's funny how projection works. Call everyone else racist when you're the racist.
And that tends to be how it works.
The one who screams loudest is the one committing the crime.
Confession through projection. It's a common ploy among the left that you always accuse your enemies of doing what you're doing.
Yeah, that's why they constantly call right-wingers Nazis. Because they're the Nazis.
Well, yeah, when you figure that Hitler was a socialist and everything he stood for is the same thing these guys are standing for, of course, they're both, the Nazis and them have an enormous amount in common.
But didn't you know? It's okay when they do it.
It's not
Of
when the
course,
Nazis do.
by even using by using the title though of that nationalist and socialist party of Germany from the 1940s, 30s and 40s is taking and endangering us of having a YouTube strike.
Yeah, I don't care.
I mean,
Nobody watches on YouTube anyway.
and let's be honest, they've got more than enough material in the other videos to strike down the entire channel already. They've got all they need.
Let's just say it right now. The blood brother, at least the blood brothers of the Democrat Party across the ocean, the Labour Party in Britain, openly admits it's socialist.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, a lot of the Democrats admit they're socialists too. Look at AOC and her bunch.
There was a meme that came out, I think, a couple of years ago, where this guy at the Labour conference in Britain made his speech, and then at the very end, he put out the Heil Hitler, and then realized how bad the optics were and changed it to the Power Fist, but it was too late. The damage had been done.
I see the Power Fist stems from the Spanish communists.
Yeah, it does.
It basically holds the same meaning with the united double fist as the fascists bundle of sticks that the
Thing is, I'm pretty
the
sure
fascist party in
I'm pretty sure that it predates the Spanish Revolution, though. I think they just adopted it. I'm pretty sure that symbol is older than than socialism.
Well, socialists have never had a unique thought in their lives. All of them steal things. Look
Well,
at
well, if you look at
look at the
if you
Nazis. They stole
if
the
you look
eagle.
at
They stole the swastika. They stole the Aryans.
it, if you look at the first socialist revolution, if you look at the French Revolution, almost all of their talking points, except for equality, existed in the American Revolution. Because they don't know how to be original, and a lot of their techniques that they've adopted that we now associate with socialism are older than socialism, but they're well-known. It's well-known rhetoric for spurring on a revolution. And so they just adopted what worked. Now we've come to associate that rhetoric with socialism, even though the rhetoric itself isn't socialist. It's just been used and distorted by them.
Same with their symbology.
Well, they also tend to take and persecute select groups. They always have. The Nazis took and persecuted the Jews and people of color and Christians. Most people forget that part, the last part, that they actually
Yeah, they like to
persecuted
associate
Christians.
Christianity with Nazism for some reason. That makes zero sense to me. They were an atheist regime.
Yeah, well, a lot of it's based on paganism, but still, they forget the fact that over 7 million Christians were put into internment camps.
Yeah, but people seem to have forgotten that the Nazis weren't pro-Christian. They like to associate the Nazis with Christians for some reason, and that they're just believing a lie.
It's the same reason why they've spent the last few decades trying to convince everyone that Nazis are right wing. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, when actually they're left wing. But you look at our left wing here in this country, they're doing the exact same thing. They're taking and picking groups to take and persecute. And except in our country, it's the whites and Christians. And what gets me is it's a bunch of whites running it.
Yeah, they're trying to undermine themselves.
See, I don't think they are targeting the whites.
They're. You think they're just trying to use black people?
I think they're trying to discredit black people. It's
Well,
it's
they
a
may be,
time
because if you listen to their rhetoric,
it is a time-old tradition of
go on.
authoritarian regimes to when your opposition is protesting to throw rioters in the middle of their protest to discredit them. It's the exact same thing. They are trying to make black people look evil.
Well, I wouldn't put it beyond them because their rhetoric matches the Klans.
Yeah.
You listen to it, the neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan say the exact same rhetoric that they do.
Oh, and another thing about that is that exact same tactic that I just mentioned is exactly what they did during the Capitol riots.
Mm-hmm.
False flag, yeah.
Well, when it comes to the Capitol riots, they really weren't riots.
Well, they put rioters in the
Everybody
middle of them,
that
but it's better than calling it the Capitol
sure they
insurrection,
did.
which is a bigger lie.
There's pretty strong evidence that the rioting was all done by Antifa types.
Yeah.
and the actual whole process was stirred up by a left-wing activists and FBI agents
Mm-hmm. All to discredit
and
them.
Capitol Police,
Yeah. All to discredit the people who
because
were
the Capitol
legitimately
Police
just
were heavily
protesting.
involved. Because there's a lot of videos showing the Capitol Police inviting them in. And it's like that woman who was shot. She was shot down in cold blood by the Capitol Police. She hadn't harmed anyone, she hadn't broken anything, and they shot her down.
Were they legitimate police or just security?
No, they were the actual Capitol Police. They answered to Pelosi. But no investigation's been going down on that shooting
Oh, of
of an
course not.
unarmed
They
woman.
have their scapegoat there. They already got what they wanted.
Yeah. And now uh, the QAnon shaman is facing almost 4 years in prison
Shaman?
for shaman. He's the one with the buffalo horns and the headdress
Oh,
and
that
dressed in
guy.
leather.
Okay.
They're
Cool looking outfit.
Yeah, the
but
QAnon shaman. The funniest thing, one of the funniest. So, there were protests in Brazil that were going on, pro Bolsonaro protests, and there was a guy, a Brazilian guy, wearing the QAnon shaman outfit, but with the Brazilian colors instead of the American.
uh,
I don't know where these people get these outfits from.
I want to know where they got that hat. If I can add it to my collection of weird little
actually
hats.
that's a fair. That's not a little hat, but that's actually a
Neither
Native
is the
American
top hat, but
headdress,
it's
is
in the
what it
collection.
is.
Tricorn's not a little one either.
But you'd almost have to get it from one of the Native American tribes or make it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know where the buffalo are. We just need a hunting license. A very, very specialized hunting license.
Yeah,
It would be
and
easier
a
just to go
lot
to one of
larger
the
caliber
ranchers.
gun than I own.
Probably be a better idea
It'd
to
be
go to one of
easier
the
just to go to
ranchers.
one of the ranchers. They have them around here, so.
But when it comes down to it the Christians always seem to end up being a target for all these evil groups.
Like the Hindus are doing in India right now?
Yes, just like the Hindus are doing in India right now, where they're taking and declaring that Christians can't even hold church services, and a group of radical Hindus are actually attacking them on the streets just for being Christians because they view them as a threat to Hinduism.
Good. They are a threat to Hinduism. They should view it as a threat.
If they Though the one spokesman for one religious group over there came out and stated that Christians really weren't a threat to Hinduism. They are if they do it right.
They were legitimately
and
living the
we as
life, yeah.
Christians should be a threat to paganism. We should be a threat to paganism in all forms. But Christians over there can be arrested for taking and trying to convert someone to Christianity. They can be they and thing about it is what's been pointed out is it's a to persecute the Christians is a direct violation of their constitution. They have a freedom of religion clause in their constitution, and it is against the law for them to take and tell them they can't meet.
But come on, India's been corrupt for a long time.
Yes, it has.
I mean, these are the people who used to burn wives with their husbands after they died, when their wives were still alive and the husbands were dead.
Well, one of the ministers from India that I've been talking to is stated that he's been arrested for proselyting. So they're Christians are under heavy persecution over there, and they've had several killed.
Which means they need to keep going. Don't stop.
Hmm.
Make it to where they can't call India Hindustan.
Well, right now, 3% of the population in India profess Christianity. And that's a dangerous thing to do in India because the two dominant religions in India are extremely anti-Christian, and that's the Hinduism and Islam.
Though, admittedly, the Muslims and the
Isn't the third
Hindus
Buddhism?
don't get along either. Yeah.
Third is Buddhism, yes. Buddhism's very apathetic when it comes to other religions. And Sikhism actually promotes all monotheistic religion.
Well, you know what they say.
So it'd be
You
antithetical to
seek and you shall
Hinduism.
find.
What did they do about the fact that Islam and Christianity are incompatible?
Sikhs are weird because they honestly believe that the one God that the Jews worship, that the Muslims worship, that the Christians worship, and that all monotheistic religions worship are all the same God, just with different names.
That is one schizophrenic god.
Well, they probably see the different religions the way we see Protestant. Oh man, I'm forgetting the word. Denominations. Where.
As evil?
No, as only having pieces of the truth.
Yes, that is how the Sikhs view it, yes. They all have a piece of it. So they make excuses for all of them. And their personal beliefs are a hodgepodge of the major monotheistic religions.
But why the turbans?
Well,
I don't know why the beards.
regards to turbines, it's because centrifugal force and centripetal force, which are two sides of the same coin, is a very effective way to transfer energy.
I said turbines, not turbines.
Believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many American accents use turbine rather than turbine.
Just none that I've ever
It
heard.
Yeah,
bothers me
actually, yeah.
every time they do it, but
Right.
those weirdos, those accents outnumber ours.
Well, when you say outnumber, do you mean by actual number of speakers? Because I'm pretty sure they don't.
Yes,
Standard English has turbine.
I can tell you from living on a boat for 5 years that used gas turbine engines that the amount of people who
Turn
called it
on the
gas
server.
turbines rather than turbines, it was over 80% of the crew at any given time.
You just can't wear it because it's gas. You've got to condense it to a solid state.
Well, when it comes to the turbines with the Sikhs, it's a traditional thing from the first Sikh. It was and it's declared headdress now. They have to wear them, but men are also required to grow beards.
Kind of
That
like the
sounds like a
Amish.
cult.
They sound like the Amish.
Essentially, it is. Well, the Amish grow the beard, but they don't have mustache.
Which I don't really see why. That seems like a odd place to draw the line. It's almost as odd as the military
Yeah, it
deciding to
does.
draw the line in the opposite direction, where you can have a mustache but can't have a beard, as we discussed in depth in our previous episode. But why draw the line?
Well, there are preachers that preach against facial hair, and there's preachers that preach for facial hair, teaching that not having it is wrong. So it's and the Bible just well in the law, go Old Testament law, it says you couldn't cut the corners of your beard.
But that was you got to
Wasn't
take
that
that
like
into context
ceremonial
there.
law,
That
though?
was a it was it was a
Yes, it was.
it's not just that. It's not just ceremonial law that it doesn't matter. It was under a specific context.
Well, all
That's
of
what the
ceremonial
pagans
law
would
was
do when
under
they were
a
in mourning.
specific context.
It wasn't a you can't shave your beard, it's you can't do this particular heathen rite of mourning.
Like the tonsure.
But that's why there were the prohibitions of cutting yourselves for the dead. Why there were the prohibitions against shaving the corners of your head. Because that's what they would do. That's what the heathens would do. It wasn't a bar none
And the
prohibition. It was all law has to be taken in context.
yeah, that's also the same set of laws that ban tattoos too.
So, that means, in context,
Uh,
under the spirit of ceremonial law, we can't use Christmas trees.
I mean, they are a heathen artifact for the worship of a pagan god. So,
have you ever heard
yeah.
your granddad preach on the subject?
No, but then again, the number of times that we actually see, most of the time when we were visiting on Christmas, which was like only about 3 times that I remember. More than that, I know, but it was like an always back and forth thing. Either we were visiting them or they were visiting us, and sometimes not at all. Um, but I can only remember 3 or 4 distinctly, and I don't remember ever going. I don't remember us staying long enough to attend services while we were visiting. Not during Christmas time.
Well, with me being a pastor, it's very difficult.
Yeah. So no, I don't think I've ever heard him preach on this
He,
topic.
he he was fond of using the evergreen tree as a symbol for eternal life.
Hmm. But the whole point of the ceremonial law that we were just discussing was not to prescribe our own meaning to it, but to specifically avoid appearing as the heathens.
Hmm.
So it,
Yes, it is.
it, it hardly matters whether we prescribe our own meaning to it, if what others will perceive the meaning as being. The only
Now I grant
upside
you,
is that a
I
majority of
know
people don't know the actual meaning of Christmas trees, so they won't perceive the heathen meaning. Or any meaning whatsoever.
Now that is true.
now
That is true.
that is true. But when it comes to like the cuttings and the tattoos and that sort of thing, I'm against doing that anyway.
Yeah, and piercings. In fact, I think there's only
Hmm.
one piercing that's actually advocated, and that's the one showing that a slave is becoming part of the household. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
That's someone directly dir- instructed.
Though we know that the Israelites did have piercings.
Yes,
We know they wore earrings.
Yeah.
but the Bible never advocated for or against earrings, except in that one case.
Yeah, the if a slave became when it's time for him to be freed, he chose to remain. They drove a nail through his ear into the post of the doorpost, and then he wore an earring in that ear, and he's family from that point on.
And in context for the people who haven't looked this up before, but Hebrew slaves worked very, very different. They were normally debt slaves, and their tenure was about 7 years while they worked off their debt. And if they chose to remain with the family, they would proceed with what Dad just described. It was not a permanent thing, and even when they were living under the family, there was a lot of checks to make sure they were well treated, for the most part.
Yeah, a lot of checks. The Hebrew slave had a ton of rights that didn't exist elsewhere. Anywhere
In fact,
else.
calling them a slave is a bit of a misnomer. They're more of an indentured servant.
But that terminology didn't
It
exist
did not
back then.
exist yet, no.
There was no distinction.
Yeah, technically speaking, when they talk about the 1619 project and the coming of the slaves, what they're actually referring to is the coming of the indentured servants into the North America, not the coming of slaves. Because the early colonies, if you wanted to come into the country and you couldn't afford the passage, somebody would pay for your passage, and then you had to work it off. But you had a contract.
Though they were guaranteed. Yeah, you had a contract and they would give you land at the end of the indenture. That's how our ancestor got 2,000 acres, because he had signed a contract for indentured servants, and then they never showed up.
He had signed a contract with the Virginia company to manage a group of indentured servants that were being sent, and they ended up going to the Bahamas, I think.
They didn't make it
Or
to Virginia
Bermuda.
anyway. But
Bermuda, Bahamas,
now
come on, pretty
the first actual black slave in the United States came into being because he took and didn't live up to his indentured servants contract and tried to leave 3 times before he fulfilled the contract. And the courts ordered him into permanent servitude. And that was the first actual slave in the United States.
It was a slippery slope from then on.
Mm-hmm. But he became an actual slave because he broke the contract 3 times.
Can you imagine just
he
how
would have got his freedom?
Can you imagine just how better precedent would have been if they had just thrown him in debtor's prison instead?
It would have made more sense, actually.
I mean, it wouldn't have been humane, but at least we wouldn't have had the precedent of slaves from that point on.
Mm-hmm. Though they didn't always treat the indentured servants very well either.
That's true.
Well, like I said before, we're not responsible for the mistakes they made several hundred years ago.
Yeah. Nor can we fix it even if we wanted to.
No. But when it comes down to it, our society is constantly making those kind of mistakes, even yet.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah.
we're not making slaves, but we still are making huge mistakes that could be easily overturned.
Yeah.
These shutdowns, for example, they're going to destroy all kinds of businesses with the shutdown. Melbourne finally opened
And
up.
they've set a precedent. They've set a precedent for the shutdowns now, so they can do it again.
As many times as they want.
Mm-hmm. Well, I expect they'll come up with some excuse for a shutdown before the next election.
If it's neo-smallpox, some people owe some Bill Gates conspiracy theorist an apology.
Well, now there's one inoculation I don't have to worry about fighting. I've already been inoculated for smallpox twice.
Not if it's neo-smallpox.
It's a newer, more durable brand of smallpox that can't be fended off with cowpox. You have to fend it off with badgerpox, which is a far more insidious strain. On a completely, no, not a completely, but on a similar related note to badgers, I just found out that there are some weird Canadians out there that are training wolverines for search and rescue after avalanches.
I had actually heard about that. Basically doing the same kind of thing that St. Bernards do.
Yeah.
I watched a video on it. But in China, they're actually putting up barbed wire in the halls of and dragging people into forced detention for being exposed to somebody who's had COVID. They don't even have to catch it.
Australia, they're just, gonna quarantine everyone who's not vaccinated.
Oh, my favorite story about COVID came from when it was still brand new, and everyone was still in that panicking phase in the lockdowns, right? So the story came from India, as we were talking about previously, where a uh, a guy got a guy caught COVID, and they found out that he was five timing his girlfriend. He had about six girlfriends. Now, here's where it got interesting. Each of those girlfriends had at least three boyfriends other than him. Each of those boyfriends had at least four girlfriends. And it chained way longer than it should have. Which
You
says
mean it should never have existed in the first place?
never should have existed in the first place. But it goes to show you that people who are willing to be with someone who's cheating on their significant other are very, very likely to be cheating themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that uh, in polygamous societies, there's not a lot of moral foundation for monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the the Muslim culture is obsessive about polygamy.
Well, one of the weirdest conversations I ever had was well, in the military, you end up working with all sorts of people. And I ended up working with this guy who is a local national from a country in Africa. I don't remember the exact country, but it's one of those French speaking ones. Um,
That's a lot of Africa.
yeah, it is a lot of Africa. And this guy knew about four languages. He knew French, he knew English, he knew at least two local tribe languages. He was, he knew his stuff. But when when you end up working with these people for long periods of time, especially when you end up standing watch with these people for long periods of time, you end up having a lot of conversations. Uh, the most interesting one and the most awkward one happened quite a ways away from each other. The most interesting one being about the differences in soup, which I will cover at a completely different time, probably off stream, well, off recording. But the most awkward one was when he was talking about how once his time in the Navy was over, he was going to go back to Africa and find a second wife. And in the conversation, he was advocating polygamy very, very strongly. And in his culture, it is very, very normal. And I was made very, very uncomfortable by the whole conversation.
That's understandable. Well, it's kind of like Obama. He talks about his dad like he idolizes him, but his dad he virtually didn't see him. Had five or six wives, and he's idolizing somebody that's never been in his life. Totally irrational.
Yeah.
Well,
It's like those people who have abusive parents and are determined to win their approval when there's no way to win their approval.
On the same note, those people who've got an abusive spouse and will defend them to the death. Rather than doing the logical thing and clearing out.
Mhm.
well, if you on that cheery note, if you like this episode, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.